esta magnífica e inspiradora charla, conferencia. Ahora aterrizamos a la tierra. Vamos con Dee Arp, que es presidenta de la INSHPO del Reino Unido y que va a presentar su conferencia, estrategias para promover a los gestores de línea, a los gerentes de línea, a priorizar la seguridad. Cuando quiera, Dee, por favor.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you so much for the introduction. My apologies, this session is in English. I can't speak your beautiful language, so I do apologise for that. But huge thank you to Hans Horst and ORP for the opportunity to be here speaking to you today. I think the session in the programme talks about persuading line managers, but I really wanted to cover how we get C-suite, senior leadership buy-in as well, because there's a lot of overlap in that. And the reason I want to do that is I hear from so many risk management professionals, so many health and safety professionals, that one of their biggest challenges is getting buy-in from leadership. And if we don't get the buy-in from the leadership, we're not going to be able to persuade our line managers and our supervisors to implement all of our amazing remedial measures. And this is where it's an extraordinary thing, isn't it? Because to us, it's obvious. It is so obvious why we do what we do. And a huge thank you to every single one of you for doing what you do. Because of what you do, people go home safe, healthy, and well every day. So you absolutely all matter. But it's not as obvious sometimes to our C-suite or our managers. And I think it's really important as we start this session to really unpack what do we mean by leadership and management. In your own organisations, do people understand the difference? And you'll see that I love a quote, and there's a great one there from Simon Sinek. Leadership is not about being in charge, it's about taking care of those in your charge. And this is where I think we're at in our profession. We need to be moving from compliance to a culture of care. But that takes time, it takes patience, it takes persistence. So just for a minute, have a think about where are you in your own organisations, with your leaders, with your managers. Do they prioritise people over the jobs they're asking those people to do? Is there an understanding of the difference between leadership, which is about inspiring and innovation and encouraging people to create their own futures, versus the management that is very much about the operational side of things? So another quote here is, management is doing things right, leadership is doing the right things. Do your leaders do the right things? Do they see the people behind the activities, the tasks they're asking them to do? And of course, then we have safety leadership. You know, what do we mean by safety leadership? I think we all do understand that. And another great quote there, people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. So this is about authentic leadership. You know, have you truly got authentic leaders? I see some leaders in organisations that tick the boxes. They've read the textbooks that say how to be a great leader, and they'll maybe even send somebody a bunch of flowers if they're off sick. But then there was an amazing story from an organisation where their chief exec did exactly that. Somebody was poorly, they authorised a bunch of flowers. When that person was back at work, the chief exec walked straight past them, didn't even know who that person was. So it's that difference between ticking the box and truly authentic leadership. But we know great safety leadership is about having the systems in place. Yes, we still need compliance. We need safety management systems. We need the policies, the processes, the procedures that put all of that into place. But we also need an environment where people have a voice. We've heard already today about the importance of psychosocial factors, of psychological safety. Have you got psychological safety in your own organisations? Do people feel they can speak up if they see something that isn't right, if they see somebody doing something that is unsafe? Do they feel able to speak up with psychological safety without fear that they're going to be punished or blamed in some way? So we need to create that environment where people can speak up and put in place safety management systems that give people the tools and the right working environment. So I'm sure many of you have got your own definitions of safety culture. And I always like to go back to where it all started. So those of you that have studied case studies in your health and safety or risk management studies, sadly, many major incidents in the 80s, the 90s, the early 2000s, were the positive is we were able to learn many lessons. And it was the Chernobyl disaster that gave us our first definition of safety culture. So yes, in the International Nuclear Safety Group that did the investigation on Chernobyl, they absolutely recognised that there needed to be compliance. There needed to be formal safety management systems and engineering controls that were lacking in some areas of Chernobyl. But they also recognised the need for senior leadership commitment and indeed commitment from everybody in that organisation. So it was from that report we got the first definition of safety culture. And that's the first one you can see on there, the assembly of characteristics and attitudes in organisations and individuals where safety is an overriding priority. And I heard a great session recently at another conference I attended where the speaker said, safety shouldn't be a priority. Strange thing to say, but what he followed on with was safety should be a value because priorities change. Safety shouldn't be something you add on, it should be a true value that is integral to everything. And I think that's the essence of a good safety culture. And I'm sure you've all got your own definitions. There are many, many out there. I think one of the most accessible I've heard is the one on there that you can see, the way we do things around here. Everybody heard that one, the way we do things around here? Yeah, a few nods there. I think what we need to talk about now as a profession is why people do the things that they do in your organisations. So yes, we need compliance, and our safety management systems will set out everything that we need in place for things to protect our people. But our safety culture will tell us what is actually happening. And usually there's a gap. Yeah, so on this side we've got, this is what should be happening. Your culture will tell you what is exactly happening. And we as professionals need to understand what that gap is. Is it small? Is it big? Is there a huge gap between what we want to happen and what is actually happening? And why is that gap there? Is it because we've not got our managers buying into health and safety? Is it because there's a blame culture? Is it because there's no authentic leadership and no buy-in from our C-suite? So that's why it's so important that we get that senior leadership buy-in that filters through to our line managers, because they set in the strategic direction of the organisation, they set in the mission, the vision, they set in the business plan that we need to feed into. They've got the budget, they've got the resources to put behind it, and they need to lead by example and commit to the whole programme of safety that is a value in everything the organisation does. So why don't they always do that? Why don't they always listen to what to us is incredibly obvious? Well, I'm going to go through these next slides quite quickly, but it's just to give an overview of perhaps why managers and senior leaders don't always have the headspace, the capacity to hear us when we're coming to them with our passion, our language about why it's so important to keep our people safe. The world is changing at a pace unprecedented, quicker than ever before, and there are so many symptoms and fallout from that. We're still recovering in many places in the world from COVID. Organisations are struggling with, do people go back into the workplaces? Do they do hybrid working? Do they do agile working? People are readdressing work-life balance. People are changing jobs. The pace of change in organisations means that we've got a skills shortage. People stay in jobs much less time than ever before. And the list goes on. The list goes on. There's pressure to perform. Yes, we always have to balance that culture of care with the pressure to perform. We do have to meet regulatory requirements, and new ones are coming out with cybersecurity and all the requirements around ethical AI and performance. There's uncertainty about the future. That creates mental health and wellbeing challenges in organisations. As a result of COVID, we got a lot more presenteeism and absenteeism, people sometimes coming into work when they really should be taking time out to heal from not being too well. And also for our line managers, often they've not been given the training to perform at that level. We often promote people because they're really great at the job that they do, but don't give them the managerial skills to do it. So there's a lot going on and we could spend the rest of this session talking about all of the challenges on our line managers and indeed our senior leaders. And when we talk to C-suite and leaders and ask them why they've not always listened to our requests, our projects, our requests for budget, all our reasoning, all our passion why we should put in our health and safety and risk management measures, these are some of the things that they say, that sometimes our profession does not think at a strategic executive level. They don't always see that wider perspective and understand all of those other things going on. They don't act in that leaderful way, become too passionate, sometimes still too compliance-driven. So I think it's fair to say in many areas, a lot of health and safety professionals, risk management, come with that need for compliance without all the perspective around it. Not giving the so what. And I'll come back to that one. Sometimes it's not obvious to the C-suite like it is to us. And sometimes we don't use our power and our influence. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about that. But one thing that I think we can always remember, this is in our toolbox and we need to use it for managers and C-suite. Lots of models of motivation out there, but this is a really nice one. Often, certainly in compliance cultures, it becomes rule-based. People are doing things because they have to. If we can motivate people, we get people doing things because they want to. And that's where we need our line managers as well and our leaders. They need to do health and safety and risk management because they want to, not just because they're fed up of us banging on the door and asking for the next project and the next resource. So true motivation comes not just when you tell somebody to do something, but tell them how to do it, why you're doing it, and the value of doing it. And these are some of the tips we can use when we're trying to persuade our managers, our C-suite, and get our voice heard. So the first one there was the C-suite says sometimes we don't think like an executive, so how can we be better at that? And this is really around understanding where the organisation is and where the direction of the organisation is. So if you don't know it already, what is the strategic direction of the organisation? What's the mission and the vision? What's the strategic objectives that are driving the business plan? Because if, for example, if growth is not on the agenda and recruitment's not on the agenda, putting a project forward that asks for more resource and more heads is not going to fly. So always try and understand what the strategy is, what the business plan is, and then how your requests, how your projects fit into that. And if you can really then build that into individual C-suite priorities and understand their challenges, you stand even more chance of getting the projects approved. And also leverage your skills. You know, you are the people that understand risks, that understand health and safety. Present that to the C-suite in an accessible way. You know, really show your value and how your knowledge, your expertise can contribute to that strategic direction of the organisation. Write the story. Write the story, but write their story, not our story. You know, I see so many OSH professionals go in with the amazing passion that we've got and duty of care, due diligence, and we don't give that wider perspective. So the C-suite do need to understand in accessible terms what is the value this project is going to bring. You know, what is the return on the investment? What is the impact it's going to have? How does it align with the organisation's business goals? And if you can really tap into your leaders' individual KPIs and start to build relationships with them and show them that you're actually helping them achieve their individual KPIs, that is also going to help. And really understand how your input shows the value of what you are suggesting. So it's about that narrative, writing their story, but being able to really craft it in a compelling way. For example, if you've got somebody who is a decision maker and they are an accountant, they're a finance person, then use that language. Start to talk to them before you're doing your presentation and understand what is going to tick their boxes. Provide data and support, but the advice there from the C-suite is do that in a limited way. They haven't got the capacity, the headspace to look through reams and reams. You just really limit that to some really key points that support and illustrate what you're trying to say. And also extend beyond compliance. So this is all around understand what matters to them. They are human beings as well, and getting to know the leaders, getting to know where they're coming from can really help. Do you use compliance-based arguments or do you use the more emotional-based ones? Because sometimes that can help as well. And the other advice here is really take the time to prepare your presentation and also know the culture of the C-suite. And although it shouldn't matter, in some organisations it does matter how you show up and present yourself. Is it a very relaxed culture amongst the leaders where you can show up very casually dressed? Or are you going to be the only one in the room without a tie if you're a guy? So it shouldn't matter, but understanding that culture can help as well. And really join the dots across the organisation. So make your case that safety is not that priority that is an add-on. Safety affects everybody in the organisation. And really include the so what. Yeah, we absolutely need to include the so what. This is why we're asking the organisation to commit to what we're asking. This is the benefit of doing what we're asking, but also if we don't do it, this is the disbenefit. Not just in terms of the cost to people, but also the financial costs and the lack of compliance as well. And also this is where we're on that patient and persistent journey to convince our leaders that investing in people, create an environment where everybody's got a voice, where everybody matters, creates innovative, resilient organisations. But we do really need to keep, as I say, our patience and persistence. And some of that, I think, and this is probably quite new territory for a health and safety conference, but it is important. It's about understanding power and influence and where it sits in your organisation and understanding where your power and influencing skills are. So power often comes with position, but I think it's really important to understand it doesn't always come with position. So start thinking about your own organisations and the hierarchy of positions, but where does the true power sit? Is it with the people who've got the highest roles in the organisation, or is it somewhere else? And where are the influences? Where are the influences? Are there influences behind the decision makers? And if you've not looked at models of power and influence, do take a little bit of time to do so, and I will give you some references from the models that I've got here. But as I say, really work out where does the power sit and how you can leverage it. And the first study that was done on sources of power was by two guys called French and Raven way back in 1959. And they originally came out with these 5 types of power. So the legitimate power is the obvious one. This does come with position, with rank. And if somebody's got legitimate power, they usually have access to reward power. So this is where they can give the bonuses, the promotion, they can do the recruitment, but they can also have the type of power we don't want to see very often or at all, and that's the coercive power. So people with legitimate power can reward and be very positive in a good way, or they can be coercive. They can create fear cultures because they can remove those bonuses, they can remove people's positions, they can demote people. Expert power. This is where you've got knowledge and skills, and you can assert power because you've got that expertise. And another nice one there is reverent power. These are the people that inspire. Now, I'm not going to ask for show of hands and embarrass people, but depending on where you are in the organisation in terms of seniority, many of you will have legitimate power. You'll have senior roles and you can exercise power there. But you will also have in abundance expert power. And I know so many OSH professionals and risk management professionals that also have reverent power. They're passionate and they inspire. So have a think about, where is your power? But also have a think about where is the power in the organisation? Yeah, because that is when you'll truly start to be able to exert your own authority by understanding where is the power across the organisation. Further to that French and Raven study, the same people added on informational power. These are people within your organisations that have been there a long time. They really know the workings of the organisation and how it operates, so they have an element of power as well. Then over the years, additional types of power have been added on. So network power, these are the people that have got connections, and you get those connections from great events like this. So you can really bring power into an organisation by utilising your connections. Centrality power, this is where somebody is incredibly visible. They might not be a senior ranking person. They might just be visible by physical presence. They're the ones that are always in the office. They're the ones that are always showing up for people. And there's an element of power with those people. Operational power, these are people that are doing operational roles and are really critical to the organisation. Framing power, we've all had these people. These are people that can tell the story. They create a good narrative. They put their point across in a really inspiring, innovative way and bring power to the table in that way. And very similar, agenda power. This is where somebody can get their report, get their item onto the agenda, get their voice heard. So yeah, do have a look at sources of power and really start to think about where is your power? Is it expertise? Is it inspirational? Is it because you've been there a long time? And really check into, are you using that to the fullest extent? And then think about where is the power in the organisation. And then have a think about ways to influence. So again, another study here. This is Cialdini's 6 principles of influence. And again, this is just a high-level overview, but just something to read about in more detail when you get chance. So you can influence by consistency, by being consistent about the points and the things you're trying to change. And equally, you're not going to influence if you are inconsistent. So consistent approach is a great one. Reciprocality, this is where somebody's done a good turn for you, a favour, and you do one in return for them. And that happens in organisations, in the informal networks. So it might be somebody gets you a place at the conference, they get you that agenda item, and there's that reciprocal arrangement. Social proof, this is where people are conditioned to be socially accepted. So that can be an influence in power. If you're benchmarking with other organisations and other organisations who do it in this way, that can be an influence for your organisation to socially have that social conscience and do it in the same way. Authority is another one. That can be a positive influence or a negative one, depending on how authority is used. Influence can come from liking somebody. And this is a great one that the OSH profession and the risk management profession has got. You know, use your ability to be liked, to inspire, to build that trust with managers and with leaders. Scarcity is an interesting one. I think the best example I can give of this is in COVID. If people think something is going to become scarce, or even perceive it's going to become scarce, it's a way to influence. In the UK, buying toilet rolls and kitchen rolls when COVID hit was an example of scarcity. There wasn't a shortage, but there was a perception, and that just influenced people to start purchasing those items. And the last principle of influence there is unity. People like to be seen to have a common agenda and a common source. So again, in the same way as power, know where your influencing skills are and know where the influences are in the organisation. Who do you need to join forces with to get the greatest influence with what you are trying to achieve? And know your people. So influencing with logic, you're not going to try and influence a creative, innovative person so much with logic. Maybe your finance person is going to be more influenced by logic, whereas your creative people would be more influenced by inspiration. Do people in your organisation want to be involved and consulted? That's where the participative influencing skill comes in. Doing a favour somebody, another way to influence. Doing a deal, not such a good way to go about things, but that does happen in organisations. Praising somebody, these are psychological skills to help influence. And then we get collective policy and force, not so good. So policy is back to that culture of compliance. We do need that, but we should be always moving beyond compliance. And we don't want to influence with force. if we have got leaders that are influencing with force, we've not got great leadership. So that is really quite a quick whiz through power and influencing skills and how you can use that to work with your managers and work with your senior leaders to try and get some of your projects, some of your great ideas listened to. And I think if we can do that, it really starts to create this model. This is a model from the World Health Organization, and you'll see at the center of that is ethics and values. So if we can start to really positively tap into our power, our influence, be aware of what C-suite, what line managers need to hear, we start to build that trust. We start to build the relationship between leaders and our people. And then in the blue boxes around that red centre, we've got our traditional health and safety, our risk management systems, but also tapping in to all the psychosocial elements. You know, how people are in their communities, that they bring their whole self to work, what access do they have to well-being and health resources, and that wider community involvement. And all of that adds up to what we know is the importance of prioritising people's safety. And I think what's really interesting with the word safety is it comes from the Latin word salvus, which means well-being, health, looking after somebody. It's that wider context. And I think over the years we've complicated things. You know, safety embraces everything that we're trying to achieve with psychological safety, well-being, psychosocial. And sometimes health and safety is very complicated. We've just seen that amazing presentation on the spacesuits and really advanced technology. Sometimes it can be super simple. And another quote there, the greatest gift you can give somebody is your presence. And I thank you for yours today. But sometimes safety is as simple as that, being present for somebody. And in this fast pace of life, you know, sometimes just showing up for each other, showing up for people at work is the best way to bring about change. And amazing that the ILO made it a human right to leave work in the same way that you joined it, because everybody has got that human right to be valued, to have a voice in the workplace. And again, because of the amazing work you all do, that happens. And that's how I'd like to finish, with a huge thank you. Because of what you all do, people are going home every day safe, healthy, well, and happy to their friends and family. Thank you for your presence. Thank you for the opportunity to be with you all at this amazing event, and do enjoy the rest of the day and the rest of the conference.